order, and we have Pastor Shannon Jackson here tonight from the Van Alstyne Church of Christ, who's going to lead us in prayer.
Father, we are truly humbled by who you are as creator of the entire universe, the all-loving and powerful God. We thank you and praise you for the relationship that you give to us through your Son, Jesus Christ. We thank you, Father, for the love that you have that is unquenchable, that you continue to pursue us each and every day to bring us into a deeper relationship with you because you love us, because you desire for us to be close to you, because, Father, you desire for us to live with you for all eternity. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to assemble tonight as leaders and citizens of this city. And we pray, Father, tonight that you would bless our time together. And, Father, we would speak words of encouragement and strength for the city as we continue to make plans. And I just pray, Father, that you would be with Mayor and Masters of the City Council tonight, that you would give them wisdom in the decisions that they make concerning this city, and that they would, Father, seek to do what is in the best interest of every citizen here. We pray, Father, tonight also that our lives would always be a reflection of our love and our gratitude for you, for the blessings that you've given to us, for the way that you protect us and look after us. And that, Father, every ounce of our being would express our love to you. That everything that we say and everything that we do would always be a reflection of who we are and who we belong to, and that our lives would always bring glory and honor to your name, and with all that we say and all that we do. And Father, we give you all praise and all glory tonight. And we ask all this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to thee, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
If it pleases the council, we're going to people being here for certain items. We are going to move up on the agenda items D, discussion regarding an inquiry from John Jennings regarding policy and procedures as they relate to construction document plan review, code compliance enforcement and construction site codes, and rectification of construction site code violations during active construction. John? Mr. Jennings?
Can you speak up, Mayor?
Oh, yes, I will try.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me come up here this evening. As you recall, I was in last month. It was not on the agenda, was able to speak, but nothing to be discussed. It was a non-open item. The concern I had at that time revolved around a construction project going on in Villanova in Georgetown Metal Heights. The condition of the construction site itself was not meeting code by city's own documentation. And as I had watched the house go up, the first thing I had done when I realized there was a problem with the exterior construction of the home was contacted our HOA board. I received no response from the board, which I expected. That's been the case since several years now. The concern with the house is it does not meet the 75% restriction for exterior walls in being stone veneer brick, or brick veneer. I could tell real quick that the home on the side had brick ledge, the back wasn't. It's obvious the back of the house was going to be siding. As they started up with the brick on the sides, they stopped far too soon to be 75%. Being as I've not had any response from the HOA, I done some further checking and discovered that the ordinance adopted by the city was verbatim the ordinance or the code restriction for the subdivision or plan development, which made sense. The city would not be able or would not want to adopt anything less than what the HOA would want to have. They would want to minimum meet the requirements for the subdivision. At that time, I went to Mr. Wheat by email, advised him that I had concerns at the home that did not meet the code. There was also concerns with various conditions on the site. By the city's building some applications here. The construction site itself, at that time, they're supposed to have a temporary address label for the front. That's been taken care of. No bricks on the house. They now have the cast stone address in the house. There was never a portable sanitary restroom for the site. And it's a requirement by the building applications. The construction area shall be maintained until job completion, maintained, clean. The construction site was far from being maintained. It has somewhat been corrected since then. It's just gotten better. But one thing that stood out tremendously was it says right here, erosion control must be in place prior to the first inspection. There was not and never has been any erosion control placed on the site. Now, at some point, the day after the meeting last month, whether it be the city or the builder, I don't know who done it, what they did was cover a stormwater intake. They did nothing for the site. And stormwater intake, all that done is prevents the water from going to that point. During a heavy rain event, the debris, the soil, the sand, the concrete, the rocks, whatever's washing off this site, is going to go down to the next intake and go into the stormwater infrastructure. The problems with that is over a period of time, the buildup will start occurring in the infrastructure. Now it may take years, it can take 10, 15 years, who knows. But it's on the paper it's not just to take the space up on paper and use it. It's there for a purpose. And that purpose is 15 years from now, as Georgetown does build out, and we sit here and there's 200 homes going in. If you take 200 construction projects that are losing 2 or 3 wheelbarrows of dirt down a gutter, the storm intake, over a period of 15 years, you'll have the equivalent of having a truckload of dirt in your system. What will happen at that time is going to stop up. Some evening, our chief is going to call, tell the city manager, we have water backed up in Georgetown. The backup lifted a man away from the street. Some children were playing and pulled in with suction. It happens every year. They're there for a reason. It's still not being maintained. I'd like to show some pictures. These are pictures that were taken, some right after I was in the first time last month, and some as recent as just last week. And we did, thank God, had some rain. You'll see from the pictures, mud, sand, dirt, rock, trash, right in the gutter. There's still no erosion control on site. As I was driving over here tonight, I went down Greenbrier. There is another lock been broken. When you start construction, the first thing that takes place on the construction site is dirt work. Excavation starts, you start feeding grade beams, you bring in, you rough in your plumbing, bring in your service, you do things like that. You plumbing set, bring in your select field, and be ready to pour concrete. You have a very disturbed area when you have rains, where there's nothing to keep the erosion from going to the gutters. It will be in the city system. And it's going to happen now, again, over on Greenbar. Another construction site, setting in the very same condition. I don't know who it is within the city, the organizational structure, that is supposed to oversee this, where there's a service that's being outsourced to Bureau of Regis. Regardless, there is a neglect of responsibilities being done in overseeing this. The very codes and ordinances the city has in place are not being enforced. The next thing that came up that I want to speak about, that I'll talk about earlier, was the construction of the housing and exterior walls. 75%. I was in last month. I was certain I had gone over by myself and had taken some quick rough measurements off the home. Felt very confident in what I've seen, that it did not meet the 75% restriction. I asked Mr. Wheat that night and asked the council to please pull the permit, bring the builder in, have plans resubmitted, bring the home to code before we move forward. Nothing was done. I got an email the next day, and I saw an email where Mr. Wheat said I was refusing to meet with him and the builder. I should not have to meet with the builder. There are people on the city paid substantially well. You should take care of these issues. They have been informed. It's not my responsibility to meet with the builder. The permit wasn't pulled, construction continued. I watched the house be painted, knowing the builder is wasting money. Why paint? Why go through the expense when you know the home doesn't need code? And looking through the plan review, it clearly states here, the city will verify submittal documents are complete and forward to Bureau of Regis for plan review. Someone within the city should be receiving, when they receive that building permit application, and it's very specific, documents they should receive, drawings, plans, everything that goes along with it. It's all here that should be given to them for review. Where along this process it's failing to happen, I don't know. But it is failing to happen. I went back this week. What I did then was through the Texas Open Information Act, I requested from the city, a letter to Mr. Wheat and Ms. Brown, some specific information regarding this project. Specifically, the original application for building, copies of drawings, any correspondence between them. What I'm looking for is a chronological tracking of where this is breaking down. Where's the failure? After a period of 10 days, I received a certified letter. I had to pay $50.30 because the information I required was costing. So I went down and paid my $50.30 back. Now they have another 5 days to either produce the documents or notify me again it's going to cost me. But needless to say, I didn't have the documents. I was ready to have it here this evening. I'm waiting. I did copy each one of the council members. I believe you got the letter I sent requesting that information. Hopefully, someone on their own initiative may have asked some of these questions that you can see without paying for it. I do not know. Since I didn't have the documentation, I went over this weekend with the assistance of Mr. McDonald, and I did scale drawings of the entire home, each elevation, I will walk you through this page by page and just take a few minutes. The first page you're looking at is basically just a flat site plan of the foundation. This is scaled 1 inch to 1 inch. These measurements are very precise. You'll notice I have notes shaded to say note number 1, labeled as garage entry. As we go through each one of these pages, it's going to tie back to show you where on this plan these elevation measurements have been taken. If you turn to the first drawing, you'll see there's the front elevation of the garage. Drawing number 1 in the right-hand corner. If you go back to the first page, drawing number 1 shows you that brick columns on the front of the garage door. Those brick columns are 2 foot by 7 foot. You'll see I have there a total allowable square footage of brick, 28 square foot. That's the front of the garage. If you go to drawing 2, drawing 2 is the west of the garage wall on the exterior. It would be the east if you're standing at the entry. That's a total brick wall. Allowable square footage is 201.375. I went down to doing this in inches. I've got your footage marked in feet and inches. I went in the inches. Some of the areas where you can tell where the brick had come up, it should be a 3-foot measurement. It's 33. I only had to use the 33 since it's what was there. But I didn't have inches. Basically, 154 square inches a square foot. You got it out, you got your square foot. Drawing 3. Drawing 3 is a little more complicated. This home has what I call a cubicle entry. You actually go through an archway entry into an enclosed porch area. Since all the brick is on the exterior and it's not showing to the outside, I counted all the brick in there, regardless. So you basically have 6 measurements that make up this cubicle entry. If you go back to the first drawing on the front page, you'll see the cubicle entry where I've got number 3 marked, and I'll show 1, 2. 1 would be the wall, small wall to your right as you're entering. 2 would be the front facade where the archway is at. 3 is the back side of that facade. 4 is the wall to your right. 5 would be your entry door. And 6 is the wall to your right. The arched entry has openings, and when you get inside there's a window. All the openings, when you look at a wall, an elevation wall, and I'll read this to you in a minute, but openings, windows, things of this nature do not count in the square footage of the walls. You'll see you have a total allowable square footage of 400.25 square foot on that front. The next picture, number 4, is the front facade of the house to the west. Has 30 square foot of window, or excuse me, 60 square foot of window in it. A total allowable square footage of brick of 161 feet. Drawing number 5 is the west elevation. Pretty simple, other than there was a 16-inch by 9-foot column that extended around the corner to the top, which added 12 square foot. So you come up there, and I went to the part, this is the first side you have some siding on the home. And you'll see you have a total of about square footage of 614 feet. And I went ahead and broke it down right there. You see you only have 52% brick in that wall compared to 52% siding compared to 47% brick. The next page, number 6, is the back wall. Since we was here in since we was here in September last month, Mr. Weed had met with the builders and told me that they were going to rectify the situation. They came in and added some stone veneer to the back. The stone veneer they have added is included in this calculation. The back of the house, and this is where the real problem comes in, there is 186 square feet of doors and windows in the back of the elevation of this home. That does not count in your square footage. As you allow for the stone that was put on, you'll see you have 494 square feet total allowable square foot on this elevation. Siding is still at 62% on the back of the house, even with the stone that Mr. Wheat and the builder has added. The last page, the next drawing, 7, is the east elevation. This extends the entire length of the house, which is 55 feet. The height of the house is 17 feet other than the front entry where it goes down to 14 inches cubic entry. It has a angled front that goes up the garage. We line up with a total allowable square foot here. Very small, very few windows on this side. There's a 1 foot by 4 foot window, which I assume is a bathroom. And there's 1 window on the second floor on the siding. But we wind up with 757.5 square foot of allowable siding. But you see, you're still at only 56% brick. So when you take all this, you go to the last page, here's where the story comes out. Through all all the drawings we have, allowable square footage of 2,656 square feet. Square foot of brick is 1701.96. Square foot of siding is 954.17. The home today, as it sits, with the stone added on the back, is just 64% in compliance. It lacks 290 square feet, meeting the 75% requirement for the subdivision. I'm not sure who is doing calculations. I assure you these are accurate. And the home still does not meet the 75% requirement. And I'm asking again, for the second time, that the builder submit proper plans to bring this home into compliance. And whoever it is in the city that oversees this needs to be dealt with. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
I'd like the question that he posed answered. Who's responsible for the state?
Well, yeah, I can answer that, Councilman. Of course, first of all, let me say there's actually two parts here. One, code violations, and the other, of course, is how you measure the masonry on the house. Let me first of all say we did invite Mr. Jennings not to meet with the builder, but to meet with Bureau Veritas to go over the numbers and show him how the house is measured in the context of our ordinance. And when you say refused, didn't want to come, wasn't any purpose, at the end of the day, he wouldn't meet with us. The purpose of that meeting was to go over any numbers he had, bring in Bureau Veritas, go over the whole situation with him. Subsequently, we met with Bureau Veritas, the builder, and the mayor, and the builder agreed to bring the house to code, and that we assured him at the same time that he wouldn't get a certificate of occupancy until that point, and he had gone beyond the point of being able to do some things, so most of the work he was doing at that time was interior work, and so we allowed him to continue, again, with the understanding that he wouldn't get a certificate of occupancy until the house did meet code. We are satisfied that it does meet code, and we have the people here this evening to go over some of that information with Mr. Jennings and others. This was what we were going to do in that meeting. We're prepared to do it here this evening if that's the council's pleasure.
You didn't answer my question. Who in the city, which city staff member is responsible for seeing that codes and requirements are met?
Well, ultimately, that's stuff from the city manager. We engage Bureau Veritas as our plan review person and company, and they also do our inspections. And again, they're here this evening to help address any of those questions.
Okay, whose responsibility is it to see that a porta potty is placed on location?
That would be our inspector.
The inspector, Bureau Veritas is responsible for seeing that the porta potty is in place?
As we outsource our building inspection department, yes, sir. They would write the notice. For that, just as a building inspector, we have one on staff.
Okay, who is responsible to see to it that the erosion control is put in place?
That's our inspector.
And the fact that there was no roll-off there.
Any code violation.
All of this problem, everything that's wrong is because of Bureau Veritas. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that presupposes that everything is all wrong. I mean,
Well, the fact that no erosion control, no porta potty, no roll-off, that's all Bureau Veritas' job, right? Is that what you're saying?
They inspect the site.
Nobody else does that. Nobody in the city is responsible for anything.
Well, the city's ultimately responsible. We're outsourcing our building inspection department.
Okay. I witnessed one house being built that there was pressure and reminders to the builder that he had to have a porta potty. And he finally got one. I also witnessed another building being built right here in Van Alstyne that never had a porta potty. Is it required or is it not required?
We have our inspector here and our plan reviewer here this evening, and I would have to defer to them on that. Ty, can you address some of those code violations? This is Ty Chapman. He is Bureau Veritas, one that does inspections here in Van Alstyne and a number of other cities. Did you get the question?
Yes, I did. I listened to Mr. Jennings, and first and foremost, I want everybody to know that building in an existing subdivision is always a tough situation. That's no excuse to allow anything to happen that shouldn't happen. But there's a lot of stories that I'm going to tell you here real quick that kind of lead us up to where we're at today. When that house started construction, we were back still in the 105, 106 degree weather. Hadn't seen a drop of rain in forever. I monitored the site on a regular basis. Obviously, am not there every single day. So, some things can happen. I mean, we didn't get any rain, but I mean, trash, debris. I was in constant communication with the builder. Telling him this needs to be done, that needs to be done, so on and so forth. I did talk to the builder 2 or 3 times about a portalet being on site. I wrote him up for the address the very first inspection that I did. When the project started, until they started doing grade work for the sidewalks and everything else, those lots out there haven't, they've been sitting vacant so long, there was not a full vegetation around the edges of the property. But it was not, I always checked to make sure there was nothing running off into the streets. And I talked to him and said, hey, I know you're going to be, having the brick guys coming in and out of here. You're going to have workers coming in and out of here. Stuff's going to get strewn all over, tore up, whatsoever. I said, there's been some accusations around Van Alstyne. I've been up here 4.5 years, overseeing, projects. To my knowledge, the complaints have been minimal. If anything, that's under my control. And based on working with the city and the previous staff and so on and so forth, the reputation of going out there and, dropping the sledgehammer on everybody for every little thing was not the direction that they wanted to go. However, they still wanted things to be enforced. So we're trying to find that fine line of, being builder, developer friendly, trying to encourage, projects, things to come in at the pace that the city wants, but also maintaining the requirements and so on and so forth. So that being said, I monitored the site. I even talked to the builder numerous times and said, if we start getting any bad weather, we're going to have to make some adjustments. I said, storm drain inlet protection needs to be installed. Erosion control. I said, with the slope of the lot, I said, you may have to put up a silt fence. And I said, we typically look at that, what we get, what complaints we get or whatever. I had not been given any complaints regarding any issues in the street. The lot did get trashy. I won't deny that a bit. And I was on the guy. I mean, I have communication with these guys every day that, doing projects. And I've done every project here pretty much for the last 4.5 years. And I do watch for the porta potties and so on and so forth. We can call them, we threaten to shut them down or whatever based on those violations. Just like I did with the storm drain inlet protection and all the other issues of concern, because again, we can't be out there every single day, and we rely on complaints to come in to, over the weekend. I know when the porta potty was out and got put out there, storm came through, blew it over in the yard. I know there was a complaint on that. I called the guy up and said, this needs to be addressed. I'm not neglecting anything being done here for the city of Van Alstyne. I drive by there every morning, half for the past 2 or 3 weeks. You know, we got some rain the other day. I went by there. You know, yeah, I mean, it's kids walking around doing whatever. You see a little dirt clods here in the street, but storm drain inlet protection was provided. And he's correct. There is no erosion control in place tonight. And the reason being is, and I'll address it tomorrow, was that I was told Friday that sod and landscape was going to be installed over the weekend, irrigation system, sod and landscape, and, you know, that's going to take care of all of that. Well, wasn't installed, so I'm going to talk to the builder tomorrow. You know, if the sod's not in, the erosion control will be put in place, and he can pay the expense of having the erosion control put in to be tore out the very next day. You know, and the point I'm getting at is, you know, we're trying to work with people to the extent to where, you know, it's not creating a problem. But, you know, any house that's built anywhere in an active subdivision is going to be a problem. You know, it's a construction site. You know, unfortunately, you've got trades and workers out there that really don't care about what's going on other than getting the job done and getting out of there. We do stay on. You know, but I do so much of it verbally, and I do a lot of it. You made the reference, and I'm not for sure which projects you're talking about, but I turn in tickets all the time with notes on the builder for this very reason, so that the city knows, you know, that, you know, I'm not out here, you know, just you know, driving by, doing my work, and moving on down the road. So I don't know if I really answered your question or not, but yes, I am responsible for anything that goes on up here, and I welcome anybody, builders, citizens, or whatever, if there's something that's not going on that they don't like, you know, they can let us know. I've been around this area for a long time, and I want to see Van Alstyne do well as much as anybody else.
So you're saying that you made exceptions to the rules
No, I didn't. I'm not making exceptions.
by not having the erosion control put up when the project first started?
No, well, that's not my intent. My intent was that we were trying to work with them, and there was no you know, no rain or anything of that nature. And I know exactly what it states in that paperwork there. But I can also remember a few years back that we, you know, had some issues, and, you know, we got scalded, and the city got scalded because, you know, we were making these builders spend, you know, $400, $500, $600 for erosion control that was going to be tore out the next day when the bricklayers drove over it, and, you know, so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to get across is I'm not going to make any exceptions to any rule that the city puts in place. That's not my job, and I will not do it. I've been a building official before, and I know how it all works. What I'm trying to get at is that, based on guidance from the city previously, is I've been asked to try to, you know, find a way to get things done without everybody complaining about, you know, they're too tough, you know, we can't afford to build here, nobody wants to come here because, you know, so on and so forth. So, but I watched it, I can promise you, you know, every time I saw, you know, I thought it was going to rain, I was on the phone with him and said, if you got a mess up there in the morning, and I wish he was here to back it up, if you got a mess up there in the morning, you're going to have a problem. And fortunately, we didn't get to that situation. But no, sir, I will never, ever make any exceptions or exclusions to the guidelines put in place. And if I'm directed, you know, to not be concerned about trying to, you know, find the happy medium and work with the people to get the project done, I can do that. You know, I've worked in cities where it's a zero tolerance. You know, if there's a Coke bottle in the front yard, fail the inspection and leave and make them pay the fee before they come back.
Is that more common?
No, it's not. What's very common practice is what I just typically explained to you, and the simple reason being is everybody knows the economic times we're in and everything, and the cities. It makes me no difference. I mean, it honestly makes me no difference. But the cities that we contract with, we pretty well try to, you know, accommodate what they're looking for, how proactive or reactive they want to be, but yet make sure that the project is done compliant. You know, if there's complaints, we address the complaints. You know, I'm not but 5 miles away from here. I make many trips up here to address a complaint. Just because I've done stuff around here for a long time, and like I say, I don't want to jeopardize my situation by ignoring something or letting the complaint go by just because I don't feel like driving back up here to look at it.
Do you typically rely on complaints for enforcement?
Well,
I mean, you've said several times, and I agree, John's not the person that should be coming to a meeting and negotiating any of this. He's a citizen that's trying to protect his property right?
Sure.
And is it a common practice that the only time you are that dependent on complaints to keep things in compliance, or do you do that on your own?
No, I do it on my own. I mean, when I have inspections up here in Van Alstyne, and I know there's projects going on, when Brahms was built, Jack in the Box, so on and so forth. Even if I didn't have inspections there before I left town, I would drive by and take a look at things. But again, like I say, my areas around here that I cover, I'm not always in Van Alstyne, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So we do rely on some complaints and things that may happen that we're not aware of. We would be aware of if I didn't have inspections for 2 days straight up here, I'd probably be aware of it the third day, but that's a little too late. That's not what we're looking for. Because ultimately, we're here for the citizens as well. I mean, it may not appear at times, but we are. We want to ensure that, what's being done here is going to be, bottom line for the end user, which is the citizen.
How many days after construction began was the sanitary facility delivered?
It was, just off the top of my head, probably definitely after the foundation was poured, framing and stuff. I don't have an exact date. Longer than it should have been. I mean, I will say, I talked to the builder multiple times, and then finally got to the point and said, hey, you got to get something done, or you're going to stop. And then it was brought out there. But
is it typical to have to treat developers that way, to give them time, make requests, give them threats? Or do most developers know that that's supposed to be done?
Well, we're actually dealing with the builders. I think that's what your
right.
intent is.
Well, builders.
Dealing with builders is tough. It's a tough job, right now, simply because we have some that are, very great in Van Alstyne. We've got some that are very great, and then we've unfortunately got the ones that you have to, beat them over the head in a roundabout way to get them to do anything. So it's worse than it used to be.
I understand they're trying to cut costs. It's a real sentence, just down to basics. They're just trying to cut costs. But just because the economic times are difficult doesn't mean that the citizens have to go out and monitor everything that's going on. It's still your job or the city's responsibility to see that that's done.
You're right, and I mean, I'm a big enough man. I'll stand up here and say that I probably allowed that porta potty, to go on too long without, dropping the hammer on it. And I apologize for that. I'm not going to make any excuses. There was no intent. I've done this for 16 years. I will admit I probably allowed that to happen and shouldn't have, but it wasn't intentional.
Did you allow the commercial property to be built completely without ever having a
No, sir. No, sir. I don't know. I don't know which project it was to know if there were circumstances, if there was a job trailer on site, or a lot of times we have, even in residential subdivisions, we have, this is not the case. They do not have a model home or anything at this point, but there are a lot of, areas that, the cities will allow or don't have a problem with if they're building a new house and they have a model home I wouldn't want to do it, but I've been told by builders that, if we let our trades use our facilities here, and I'm sure they do it, like you said, to save costs. They can let them go, use their restroom or whatever. But we also see a lot that have, job trailers on site, where they have the bathrooms and the job trailers, and that's very common on commercial sites. I don't know which project it is.
Well, if they had a job trailer that had a restroom, it would have to be plumbed in for water and for sewer.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be
Or
plumbed in
it's
just
just
a
a
sewer
portable
system.
trailer.
They typically have a holding tank underneath them that are serviced basically by a porta potty company that comes out and does the same thing to them as they do the others. I know for a fact, Brahms, Jack in the Box, those, they have job trailers off to the south side of the property over there. And may not have had the porta leads on the side.
Do cities typically assist you in observing violations so citizens don't have to? Is that a common thing or an uncommon thing?
You say assist, you mean like letting me know?
Let the city people, the city employees monitoring to a degree the activity of the construction site so citizens don't have to.
Well, typically not, because the cities typically, their staffs, depending on what their staff levels are, have got enough, to take care of, I'm assuming, on their own. The cities usually are the ones that gets the phone calls, unless somebody actually, and I've got them here. I mean, I know many people in Van Alstyne. I've had people call me personally on my phone and say, hey, can you look at this, check this out, so on and so forth. But it is real common that the cities or the council, mayor, whatever, could get the phone call, and then, obviously, they're going to email or, call or notify me that there's an issue or a concern that needs to be taken care of, or at least, go look at it and see what needs to be addressed.
Is that the most convenient way or the most workable way is to have kind of a vigilante type thing where you drive around looking for violations, or is it more typical to stop?
Well, my experience from actually working for cities and then, working in the third party sector is there's not many around that anymore that, have inspectors just driving the neighborhoods looking for problems. They may have a code enforcement department, that will tackle some of that kind of stuff. Our responsibilities are primarily the construction sites, whether it be residential or commercial. And I think other than some of these northern cities where I know so many people that will call me, their only resource is to contact the city and, make a complaint or voice a complaint, and then, they'll let me know, and then I'll go address it for them. But, even a long time ago when I worked for cities myself, we monitored the construction sites, but, we didn't go around just, looking for various problems or whatever. I mean, our primary focal point is, building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, fire, life safety, health, so on and so forth. And then the other issues that we're addressing tonight, by no means am I saying they're not important, because they are. Stormwater protection is important, erosion control is important, sanitary facilities, I'm not denying that a bit. But those are typically some things that unintentionally, in my case, may get overlooked a little bit or worked with a little bit more than, somebody that's got a major issue, from the, fire, health, and life safety standpoint. But none of it is ever ignored.
I think the main issue tonight is the issue with the brick. Can you address that?
Well, and I brought Joe Heisel with me as well, and I'm leading into where we're going here. And then if we're going to jump off that first one real quick, if I may, I will say, to the people out there, I apologize if things, got way out of hand. I did monitor the site. I did know there was trash out there. We get beat up pretty regularly, in subdivisions that are active, and we know that going into it. And we work hard to try to keep them going and keep them up. And it's not being ignored. So I'll
just leave it at that. This one.
Ty, I have a question in regard to, there was a requirement, and I don't know where it was left or how it's actually attached to like residential or size of property that is required for erosion control up to a certain size or down to a certain size. And it used to be anything that was, and again, I'm more familiar with commercial than residential, but it used to be like 3 acres. Has that been adjusted and brought down and or depending on conditions? Like if you got something that's way up on the hill and you're going to disturb that whole property in the process of building, obviously anything that's going to come down rain-wise, you're going to have something to control it. But still, if it was under 3 acres in commercial, it was still the responsibility of the contractor to maintain it. Now, if that meant a broom and a shovel, that's what maintaining was.
And as far as the sizing, I know what you're talking about, but I wouldn't stand up here and spout off exactly what it says because I'm not 100% for sure. I do know that, even super duper large commercial jobs, schools, so on and so forth, down to our single family and multi duplexes and so on and so forth, that, there is the big key factor that appears to be not only, pretty much everybody's mindset, especially under these times, is the conditions. Has it been raining? Has it been raining for 2 weeks? And I even talked to some of the staff, prior to these complaints coming up, and basically said, I talked to the builder, and 105, 106, dead hot, nothing. I'm watching the streets. I know there could easily be complaints. That's a very active corner, so on and so forth. And even after a couple of these showers we had, I came right straight up here that morning. Drove by, took a look at it, making sure there wasn't any monstrous messes out in the street or anything that's going to cause traffic problems at that corner that somebody could hit a mudslip and slide into another car. And like I say, I'm not going to deny erosion control was not and is not in place now due to what I was told by the builder the other day. But I can also say obviously, yes, I don't live there, so I'm sure that the homeowners there may have a different thought. But there was never at any time out in the street, a situation that I would consider to be a major issue as far as compared to a lot of things that I see that I've seen around here during the encounter during a few months, and it's a whole different ballgame. Summer times, typically erosion control is, not with it's hot and dry, not as critical, but it's still monitored. And again, I'm fully open to if that's not the way the city would like to progress forward with it, and to be more stringent on it and say it's got to be there. Then we work for y'all. I mean, we work for y'all. We work for the citizens. We don't work for the builders.
Okay, on the brick.
Yeah. If we're going to break, I'd like to say something about what he's commented on here. Just a couple of comments. In all respect, I fully understand construction. I deal with it myself. The hardships involved in it. A couple things I want to say is, regardless of where your project is at, whether it's established neighborhood or not, the project is as good as it's supposed to be put in. If it's managed, it's organized, it's planned, and administered correctly, it's like any other project that we have to do. Second thing is, I would not, if it's in the regulations of the city to have erosion control, I wouldn't rely on Mother Nature to be making decisions whether or not I'm enforcing that. It's either enforceable or it's not. It's in your rules, it's in your regulations, it's in your ordinance. Second thing I'll say is the porta potty went up on September the 12th, the day before the last council meeting, because I had notified Mr. Weed construction had been going on for 2 months. Going to the brick, I'd like to say something too. After we met last month, and I spoke to Mr. Wheat after the meeting, and the brick is an issue. And Mr. Wheat's comment to me was, well, there's a little loophole in the ordinance. And yes, I took it literally. When somebody tells me there's a loophole in an ordinance, how else would you take this? Well, what I'm going to say is, and I'm going to read you the ordinance here in just a second. There was no loophole when I built my house, or when Mark Steele built his house, or when Mr. Flake built his house. You do not change in the middle of the game and come up with some other rule or loophole on the siding on the home. It states here, a minimum of 75% of the total exterior wall surfaces of all main buildings shall have an exterior finish of stone, stone veneer, brick, or brick veneer. Front walls of each residence shall be 100% stone, stone veneer, brick, brick veneer. And it clearly states, windows, doors, other openings, cantilever walls, dormers, and other areas where brick will need to be supported by wood are excluded from calculation of total exterior wall and front wall areas. Until Mr. Warren knows this, there are no cantilever walls in these houses out here. Cantilever wall is a wall that extends horizontal from the vertical support where brick would not be supported by a brick ridge or something other than wood. Nothing's changed in the construction of the homes. There's not a home out there that fell under this loophole that someone's going to try to present here. No other home is built like this out here. All the homes out there are 75% by this. So I'm anxious to see what they want to say.
Before I turn it over to Joe, what I was going to finish up saying was that during the inspection process out there, the tickets that were turned in and everything, the first two inspections I made out there, when it got to that stage, the contractor did not have his approved plans out there. It was failed. He was told to have his plans on site because we wanted to look at that. That's the first two-story house that's been bid out there that I've been involved with. We've done some single stories up on San Carlos. So, I'm fully aware of masonry issues and so on and so forth. So finally, after the third time and having some substantial things repaired on the inside, the approved plans were brought up. In the meantime, the transition between waiting on him to get that and get my stuff up here to where, I can look at the approved city set of plans because I never see them until I get to the job site. They go through the plan review department. The concern had come in, shortly before that. So what I had done, before we allowed anything to continue going, we had the builders, the design person, send the city a letter, calculated letter showing, what they had come up with. And of course, he had a copy of the ordinance with it, and it stated that he had come up with, don't quote me, if I remember, 78%, something of that nature. Well, we went ahead. He was at the point there. He hadn't passed an inspection, but everything interior was done, safe, sound. He was given the okay to start insulating, at his own risk, depending upon the calculation. So that's when we got Joe involved, and I'll let him take it over here from there. Because he's the head of the plan review department, and he can tell you what he just came up with, and I'll chime back in if needed or if there's any questions.
Good evening. Again, what we have here is a house. The front is 100%. At the time before, as it's under construction, the rear side was rear end, or the back side of the house was all siding. the sides, you had brick on the lower level, siding on the upper level. So, if you just take the calculations, excluding the windows, doors, and what you have there, you're going to have a large percentage of siding plus brick. But what's happening here on the exterior walls, the details show that the floor above the first floor was extending out beyond the wall of the first story. So we have floor trusses going across here. And then what they have is the exterior wall going up above. Therefore, what happens is that is a cantilevered floor supporting an exterior wall. And what happens here with the ordinance states that it excludes the calculations on the structure, portion of the structure that is cantilevered. So what's happening here is, I don't have a picture here or not. Yeah. That's good enough right there. So this is the back side of the house, and it was all siding. And if you can imagine that the sides were brick on the lower level and siding on the sides, just like this. But what's unique about this is that the sides, or the house, the second floor, is cantilevered over to this brick edge here. And then the floor is supporting this wall coming up here in the trusses. So basically, the siding on each side of the house is excluded from the calculation. We've got 100% side, 100% brick on the front of the house, and we only have, I think you have about 1,700 square feet of siding or something like that. The house only has now, excluding the sides, 346 square feet of siding, and that comes out to be, if you do the calculation, you come out to 78% masonry. So it does comply with the ordinance.
So your definition, what constitutes by dimension a cantilever in residential?
Residential or commercial, doesn't matter. Even if it's offset by an inch, quarter inch. There is not a minimum dimension for cantilever.
I heard someplace that maybe Frisco or somebody like that had to go back in and rewrite their definition of cantilever because they had that same kind of problem, or have you heard anything about it?
I haven't heard about that at all. But again, I don't know if it's a loophole. I mean, the side is totally flush. If that's what the designer or builder wanted, that's what the plans indicated. The floor being cantilever. There's really nothing we can do to say, no, you got to brick the whole side of the house. The builder made that choice to have those both sides completely flat surface. And whether to get around the brick requirements, I have no idea. All we do is review what is shown on the plan.
Well, I think, Ty, you've seen this problem before in other cities, and, it's something that we need to address in our ordinance. If, the council wants to somehow redefine the exterior skin or whatever a cantilever is, I'm sure we're not the first city to run into this issue. It's been addressed somewhere before. This just happens to be the first time that we've run into it.
You can try drive down the street and tell that that house doesn't match the other home that are out there.
Right.
I mean, it's just, I mean, and I haven't got out and measured, I just made a simple observation driving down the street. That place, that house looks out of place in that neighborhood. And they're trying to build a cheap house, is what it appears to be. They're trying to cut costs on it. No porta potty, no roll-offs. They're not putting the required amount of brick on there. They're trying to build a cheap house.
They cut the corners.
And we, as a city, are going to sit back and let that happen.
I can speak on that a little bit. As far as I don't know what they're trying to do. It's basically like Joe stated. I can tell you in many other areas, we've had situations come up. This basically, other than the few homes, Onyx homes built, there hasn't been any construction out there. When this was going strong, you had Ashton Woods and so on and so forth, which I wasn't involved with. You're going to have houses, that are built up just like this one's being built up. However, everybody there, they're building house plan. Everything's going to look pretty similar. I've encountered this recently in the past couple of years with, when the building crunch hit. Builders pulled out. Now things are perking up a little bit. New builders are moving into existing neighborhoods. People are complaining left and right, whether it be the shingle material. We have encountered this issue in other cities based on the interpretation of the ordinance. I did work for the city of Frisco at the time that this came up when David Weekly rolled into town and decided to use this same scenario of a cantilever wall section and a whole subdivision out there. And, yes, they went in and changed their ordinance, but they couldn't do anything about it at that subdivision because of the way the ordinance was stated. Like I say, just like, not wavering from any rules on anything else. If we have a builder that comes to us and says, here's what we've got, like during the review stage or something, I deal with it pretty frequently now that people are starting to build back up again. Their house, they don't fit in. The house is, 5 miles, 10 miles south of here. You're seeing houses come in that don't really match or fit in with what was existing there. But we as the inspection company can't say, that doesn't look right, those shingles, that's not the same color of shingles. We have ordinances and minimum standards of code to go by, and the ordinance that was put in place whenever this was by the city council, that if now that this is brought up, like Frisco, had to do, if that's not, if you don't want that to be a cantilevered wall section, then make it very defined that, and I don't remember what they did on theirs, but I think they changed their ordinance to something stating that if there was any open space above a brick ledge, with the exception of box windows, there's so many garden tubs and so on that go in, it had to be 100% brick on the sides. But the bottom line is, that is, and probably this guy coming in new, the builder coming in new, and his designer, I'm sure they read this and said, well, hey, that's a cantilever wall section. Let's get it to, the as close to the minimum as we can.
How many years' experience has this builder had in building homes?
That I really don't know. I mean, I've just gotten to basically know the gentleman through, this house out here. I know he's moved south and has turned in a couple of permits to build in Anna. I did do one house with him with another company up in Howe. As far as his experience, I honestly don't know.
I guess my question is, prior to the back brick being put on there, what was the percentage of the brick? And if it didn't meet the the ordinance or the code at the time that he turned in his plans for review, how did he get a permit?
Well, I think to answer the first question, or I guess you know the numbers, I guess the first,
Yeah, well,
66.1% is what Joe had come up with. And then as far as the permitting process and everything else, when that was submitted, you know, there was, you know, obviously, you know, there was no, typically the builders, other than the big, large volume, DR work and so on and so forth, you know, they will put their actual percentages on there. That is the responsibility of the designer or the builder to ensure that they have copies of this to make sure they're meeting those requirements of what the ordinance is. As far as our plan review process, again, you know, we're typically, you know, looking at the life safety, egress, you know, so on and so forth. But as far as the masonry and how it's, you know, how it's calculated on a takeoff, you know, I can let Joe, you know, he deals with that every day. That's more the plan review side than the inspection side. And as far as what happens when it goes down there, you know, being reviewed, I do know that the gentleman that actually reviewed these plans, you know, he's no longer with us because of this, so he's not here to ask what did you do or what did you not do.
So do you guys issue the permit?
No, the city. No, the way we're set up, you know, we don't take applications, we don't issue permits, and we don't collect any money. You know, everything starts with the city. It gets sent to us for review. We do the reviews, and we send it back to the city and check everything. You know, the documentation, you know, so on and so forth.
But is the permit issued with your recommendation?
The permits come back. What did they say?
They say approved.
Approved.
Yeah, need to be approved.
Who approves it?
The plans examiner does.
And that's with your company?
Yes. And we couldn't believe the plans examiner that did this. We just couldn't believe that he missed it. Because he usually is always looking hard for these masonry requirements, and we have no idea what happened.
This is a builder that's trying to come in and build a cheap house, cut corners every chance you get. And I have a lot of respect for you. I've never dealt with you personally on a business level, but I've heard nothing but good things about you. The fairness and being equal. This is not a personal attack of any nature. You have, by your own admission tonight, have given this guy break after break after break. You said his plans weren't on site, and 2 or 3 times, and you let that go. You let the porta potty go. You let this go. You let that go. And that's the guy that's coming in here and trying to undermine what we're doing.
No, sir,
and you're being accommodating to it.
I stated that I let the porta potty go probably longer than it should have, but I stated that with his approved plans on site, he was failed. I did not let him go. I did not let him go any further until he had the approved plans on site.
So you stopped the construction?
Well, basically, when they're failed, yeah, construction stopped. They're at a point of inspection. At that point, that there's...
Is that not a red flag when you're dealing with people that can't at least meet the minimum requirements?
Oh, sure. I mean, sure it is. I mean, I've left him semi-nasty, uncharacteristic messages on his, you know, inspection tickets, basically showing my frustration that, you know, I'm tired of coming up here every day. You don't have your plans on site. You don't have your previous inspection ticket on site. There was no progress made, you know, during that time.
And because your guy failed to notice that it was not 75%, we're going to have a house out there that is obviously not in compliance, and there's nothing we can do about it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, sir. What I'm based on the information we have off of your ordinance, the house is in compliance. Now, you know, what it's going to come down to is it's going to come down to an interpretation. There's obviously a belief that those are not cantilevered wall sections. There's belief on our part that there are, and, we've talked to other code officials and so on, and, asked the question, got the opinion. So I think what it boils down to is the interpretation of this ordinance before we can state whether that house is in compliance or not.
So can you stop the construction until you do decide if there's a legal issue with that? And Julie, feel free to jump in here anytime. Is it a legal issue that we need to discuss, or is it truly a loophole that we have to let go?
May I interject something?
Let's get a response from our attorney, and then you can.
I think the ordinance is clear. I don't think loophole is the correct word because it says that doesn't count. It's not hidden, it's not some way around it. It flat out says that doesn't count, so it's not a loophole. I think the issue comes down to, from an architectural or engineering or building standpoint, what does that word mean in construction?
Is it not the city's interpretation of what that means that carries more weight than what a builder that's trying to cut corners coming in here doing?
Yes.
Okay. Then the city can say, our interpretation is this, and we require that it be covered with 75% brick or rock. It's our interpretation, not the builders to come in and interpret what's right or wrong for Van Alstyne. It's our job as a council to hold people's feet to the fire to do what is right the way we see that it needs to be done. And that's what I think needs to be done here, is we need to take it as a legal issue and an interpretation and say, builder, this is what we interpret that to be, and that's the way we want it. Can that not be done?
Well, I'm not familiar with construction, but under the law, when you're reading a law, which an ordinance is a law, so these rules apply, you take the plain and ordinary meaning of words. If it's a term of art, a specialized industry term, something along those lines, then you take what it means in that specialized industry. The courts really will use Webster's dictionary to see what a word means when they're interpreting a law or a statute. So this word, I don't know whether it's a term of art in the construction industry that has a particular meaning. If it is, then that's the meaning it has to be given versus the city saying it means something different when the city hasn't defined it as something.
Well, we have a reputation, we have a record of how many homes are in Georgetown that have not been allowed to be a variance. So why are we allowing one to be because of the interpretation?
May I interject something, please? Every home out there that is two-story is the same construction. In a two-story home, when you're going from brick to siding, because of the thickness of the brick, you have to extend the floor trusses out to a dimension where when you place an 1.5 inch brick to have a flush side of the wall where they're symmetrically even, you must extend the floor because the siding you're putting on is 5/16. That's common. Kim's house is built like that. Every house out there that's 2 stories is built like that. It is not a cantilever description to get you out of putting brick on the wall. It's how you place siding. There's wall after wall out there that's like that, but there's 75% brick with 25% siding. And what you're referring to here, and I've got a copy of the letter that they allowed the builder to write his own description. He told them, and this is when I got the email from Mr. Blake said, looks like the house is compliant. He took the builder's word. The wall surfaces are 100% brick veneer on front wall with 70% of total. The second story walls on both sides are cantilevered over the brick. He's trying to tell you what the definition of cantilever is. Every house out there is not like that. They were not built under that code. It clearly states what is required on the houses. He's playing word games.
He's trying to build a 2,000.
I don't see where you get the man's trying to build a cheap house.
I have done a lot
Just
of
as nice as how-
Supposed he's not spending the money that everybody else is spending.
Really?
Every one of them out there is going to try to build a house the cheapest they can build it, that will sell good and they can make money. So that's not everybody. Who isn't going to build houses for cheaper amount of money if they can?
Well, if the
It's
city
just-
allows them to, of course they're going to.
I mean, there's cheaper houses up the front of the addition too, but I mean that just means it's part of the structure. It's part of
Like
the
your home with brown brick,
Is my home entirely brick? No,
how much of it is siding?
I have no idea.
It's-
It's the back part of
would be
it has
at a maximum
one area
25%.
one area in the back is not
If
siding.
you allow a builder
but-
to come in and build a home that's 64% sided, the value of the square footage of that home drops, which will automatically drop the comp on your home and devalue your house.
Not
Mayor?
mine.
Yes. Am I allowed to say something? Being a Georgetown resident, being a witness to this?
Something he said, I couldn't tell how this was being interpreted. So I just want to be sure everyone's on the same page. For the side walls and the rear wall, it's not 75% of each wall has to be masonry. It's 75% of the whole house.
And Julie, you drive down the street and that's what you see. The two sides in the front are brick and the back is siding. I mean, that, am I right? Is that?
That's correct. The majority of siding you'll see on any side elevation of a home at the most is 25%. They have to do that to maintain 100 on the front, 100% of siding on the back, and you're forced to have 75 on the side. So 25% of the siding is going to be siding. All the two-story homes are like that. The same construction, the same floor trusses, the same extension of the building. A cantilever, the true architectural description of a cantilever wall, and I have seen you pictures of it.
I know you sent me pictures, but they didn't.
Is a
That wasn't
structure that
proof
extends
that said it was
past the vertical wall to where the brick that would be put on it is not, would have to be supported by wood. These walls have a brick ledge. They could have been bricked up enough to have met compliancy on the house. The builder is trying to cut costs and build a cheaper home, which is devaluing our homes. I don't know how to make it any clearer. And he's being allowed to do it.
I think the city's interpretation is what should be, is what should be used and not a builder's interpretation that's trying to cut costs.
You have in front of you the percentages of brick on this home. I stand by those figures to anything you want to put.
Well, the intended, whether or not cantilever falls into this or not and creates the exclusion that they're getting by with, but the intent was definitely that 75% of the exterior wall surface was to be masonry, brickstone, as masonry would be defined.
And we have every town in Georgetown as a witness to that, because that's how they were all built. You're right.
But that was the way it was intended to be. Now, if there is a word that can be used, in this case cantilever, that allows that as it goes through the plan review process, then that's unfortunate. But still, the whole intent of the ordinance was that 75% of the exterior wall surface to be masonry. So,
and for our sake, because this house, based off, in my opinion, based off of the obvious discrepancies of the interpretation of that particular ordinance there, also not having experience prior with any of the other houses to know, what had or what had not been excluded. The first house we did out there, like I said, 4 years on 2-story. We need to know how y'all want to, how y'all interpret to be enforced. And again, if it's easier for us to go out there to a builder, whether it be this gentleman or another guy that decides to come in and say, no, you can't do that. And he said, oh, yes, I can, based on this ordinance right here, so on and so forth. And then, we can say, no, sir, you can't, because, here's the interpretation the city, by building code, has the authority, having jurisdiction. If there's any discrepancies, basically any gray areas, whatever, the city, basically has the final say. And then, where it goes there from a legal standpoint, as long as all the X's are crossed and I's are dotted or whatever.
Extend brick on that.
Sure he could. Yeah, absolutely he could. And that's what Frisco changed theirs to at the time I was over there.
I mean, he
They
could
had-
do that right today. He has the base to extend the brick
On
out
the back here?
Is that right, John? No, on the side.
No,
Because he's flush.
The brick goes up to the 5.5-inch brick pocket.
On the sides,
On the
it's the
sides
same
that-
way?
That comes up. Now, before he built the box out, sure, he could, they could have bricked the whole thing up, but I mean,
A lot cheaper to tear that side out and put some brick in than hire a lawyer.
well,
I
that would be
just don't
his.
think we should allow one house in Van Alstyne, and more particularly in Georgetown, to be an oops. And just walk them down the road.
Well, and that would be as far as what would be more cost effective as far as a lawyer tearing down. That would be basically for that individual to hash out, but based on again the interpretation of the ordinance.
All you have to do is stand in front of the house and look left and right and ahead, and you're going to see examples of how we interpret
Well,
that
and
ordinance.
I've been around the neighborhood looking. There are some out there that I would question. It's been there long before. My team are up here. I don't know how it was done previously. I regret that I'm involved with first if it is a oops, but I can assure you if that's in fact the case, we've all spent countless hours and a lot of time, and we're going to make sure that there's not another one out there as long as we've got something to legally enforce it by, and even to the point of requiring the builders to submit their calculations. We're not taking their word for what they say. It's their responsibility to provide us the documentation. That's why we went and got a second opinion from the judge. We wanted to see what the guy had to say. I don't have to have somebody tell me what the definition of a cantilever is. I can call ICC and find out what the definition of a cantilever is. We just requested that documentation from the builder to see where they were coming from and how they determined it. And it was very obvious that that's how they determined it, was based on that cantilever wall section. And we had really nothing to go back to them, part of our discussion, to go back and say, you're wrong. If the city chooses to, say that they're wrong, we do what the city asks us to do. But, I can't be the one to go out there and tell the guy he's wrong based on an ordinance that is, can be interpreted in a couple different ways. So we just, whatever's decided, we talked about it. We know what the concerns and issues and stuff have been. Didn't have any issues with the first houses that were built out there, not even with erosion control or anything else. This has just been an unfortunate, nightmare for all of us. We would just like to know how you want us to proceed. I have no problem going out there tomorrow and telling the guy to stop, but it then needs to be turned over to the city to tell him why he has to stop. So, trust me, I'm not taking up for the guy, at all.
I understand that. And I understand you're in an awkward position. We need to give you, we as the city and the city council and the city manager need to give you marching orders, and there's no doubt you will carry out what we tell you. Absolutely. I have all the faith in the world that you do. It's up, the ball's in our court now.
Right, so,
Let me say one thing, and you just said something here. According to what was a full set of plans, it says here, elevation drawings must clearly state that the structure meets the exterior requirements set forth by the city of Alstyne. Was that submitted when the plans came to you?
It just had 60 or the percentage written on it. What we're talking about is an actual takeoff on it. As far as typically and that's a very common chip sheet. I've seen that identical.
Was that done when you submitted plans?
As far as just the percentage, I don't know. I'd have to ask either. I don't see them. I can't answer that question because I don't see them until they get to the field.
I'll say one last thing. I know this is. I don't know if any of you have gone. I have gone as far as looking into this builder. And I would recommend each one of you look up the name of Mr. Derek Humphreys, his ties with Mr. Joe Lawless and some other folks. These are 10-star home people. Look at some history of the Sherman. Give us some more facts. I would highly recommend it.
Well, of course, I need to rely on Judy too. Is just a verbal interpretation good enough, or do we need to bring an ordinance back that clarifies this whole issue? That doesn't fix this problem, but
Well, it's not an issue. I wouldn't say the issue is particular to the PD ordinance that covers the neighborhood. I would say it's a citywide issue, and you need to know what that word means from a citywide perspective. So the best place to put a definition of that word or to clarify it would be in the actual zoning ordinance itself, because that still applies to the neighborhood, except to the extent it was specifically changed. If you define a word in the zoning ordinance, then that's going to apply to this neighborhood and throughout the city. And I'm hearing everybody wants the same thing. Everyone wants the same end result. And I think just working towards that instead of trying to make points to prove who's right and who's not right would be much more productive and get us to where everybody wants to be, which is the same place more effectively.
Well, it would be pretty easy to make sure that within that ordinance that it's clearly stated 75% of the exterior surface with and no exceptions. I mean, that's a pretty easy statement, and that's pretty easy to understand. So, yes?
I'm going to interrupt, I was going to say something about that a minute ago. If I may, I would give a suggestion just from experience I've seen with these situations. Is you're right, everything is basically excluded with the exception of the areas where you would have brick on wood supported, where you have, a dormer or something or a gable end. That's very common practice. And I'm definitely here to give recommendations to the council. A suggestion would be that if this was revisited, that basically everything's taken out of it with the exception of areas where it would have to be treated in a brick on wood situation that's going to require engineering and built up beams and steel lintels and everything else. And that's what a lot of the towns that are going to, most of it is derived from these kind of issues that came up. It really needs to be specifically defined as what it is, because I found out in this profession, especially here in the last 2 or 3 years, I'm not saying this gentleman, but a lot of the builders, they don't look for what they can do, they look for what they don't have to do. And again, I just want to get the end result and get it right. And I want things to happen right out there, just like y'all do. Huge learning curve tonight.
Well, I guess at this point,
I think Julie has something else to say.
Yeah, Tina was kind enough to pass me down the ordinance, and in looking at the language, it is only a cantilevered wall that would need to be supported by wood that is excluded. I think I heard him say this one is not supported by wood.
The forgery section is supported by a wood wall, and then you have the brick that comes up underneath the box out, which is basically what I determined to call the box out. It comes out over.
That is what it's, because it talks about the windows, doors, other openings, the cantilevered exterior walls, and the dormers. and other areas where brick would need to be supported by wood are excluded. So that's referring back as if all of those things are something that would need to be supported by wood. So I don't know if
And
that's
that's-
enough of a definition or if it needs to be.
And all you have to do is take the siding off and you can put brick on there. It's got a place to build up.
Well, no, it's not that easy.
No, you got
Not now,
behind
because they
that.
extended the building. They purposely did what they did to put siding on. That's what everybody, you have to understand structures and foundations. They extended the floor joist past the wall sheet, it out to make it flush with the side of the brick. If they had brought it back like it should have been, and by definition, would have been built, the brick ledge is on both sides to have taken the brick up 3 more foot. 3 more foot, and they could have put all the siding they wanted on each side. They purposely did what they did to cut the cost of the home.
I just don't think we should let the notes go by. If we have to fight it, then that's what we have to do the right thing. Because this builder obviously knows that he's not doing the right thing.
Yes, he did.
Well, I think at this point it might be best if Mr. Wheat visits with the council tomorrow to see what the wishes of the council are, because we can't make a decision on it this evening.
Well, you can't vote, you can give your staff direction on where you'd like to go for this, or Mr. Stiff. Anybody else would like to weigh in?
Mr. Clayton?
I think we ought to rewrite the rules where it is properly defined what exactly we want, so that it doesn't happen in the future. I think that from what I understand about what I know, like, got a lot of definition of cantilever, but to me it sounded like exactly what you were describing makes it a cantilevered wall to me. Okay, by the way you were describing the wood being over the brick and moving it out and having to go past the wall, that made it a cantilevered wall to me, but that's only to me. So I wouldn't be a good judge, I guess, to be interpreted. But that's my feeling. So therefore, I don't have any problems with that guy continuing to build the one that he's built. But we do go ahead and change the laws and make it to where it does that in the future. Same decision we made last week when we decided, last month, when we decided to allow somebody to get by with less than 66% brick on their house because council decided they wanted to let them get by with it. That's my feeling.
Mr. Mosby?
Well, I think it comes down to the definition of cantilever wall. And is he in compliance with cantilever wall? Is it in compliance with what they interpret as a cantilever wall?
Based on Joe's calculations, using the exception and exclusions for the cantilever wall section of 78.2 square feet of masonry.
And at the same time, I think we need to revisit our
It's really kind of two issues. You shut it down now, or you let them go ahead and rewrite the rules.
May I say something to that? I was here when you were, the council was in a rock and a hard place last winter when a home had already been built that was out of compliance. You had no other choice than to give that gentleman a variance.
Where's that?
You voted on it last month.
I know I voted against it, and the guys now started on building the house, so there wasn't a house built.
No, there was already a house existing that was out of compliance. That's,
Well, there was a house that we had a question about whether it was out of compliance. We don't know that
the
yet.
council gave a variance, am I not correct?
You gave a variance to the second, to the house that the guy's building, not to the worst, not to the first house. You can go back and look through the council meeting on it.
But there was already a house that existed in that meeting.
There was already a
Once you
duplex,
give a variance-
but we don't know whether the rules have changed in between now and then. That's what we're trying to find out. I'm trying to find out.
Once you give a variance, you have set a precedence that you cannot go back.
Well, the council gave a variance.
I realize that.
Mr. Mosby?
What do you think about it?
I'll agree with AC and Billy. the fact that there was a definition, by definition in plan review, it does allow apparently for this. Again, I'm not totally familiar with residential. I'm going to have to take your word for it that by definition, the way it reads, that allows that to happen. But we do need to make it very clear going forward that if we have new construction and 75% is the number that has to be as far as total surface of exterior surface, then that's what it needs to be. And it needs to be simply understood and with no other verbiage to confuse it.
Mr. Smith?
It's pretty obvious how I feel. We need to change it so this doesn't happen again, but I don't think we should allow an oops to be created that is going to be detrimental to that community.
Mr. Trammell?
I think we should clarify our ordinances and make it clear that, make it enforceable, and that there will be no doubt about how we feel about it.
How do you feel about this one, this particular house? I think what I'm trying to get, gentlemen, is it either complies or it doesn't comply, or it complies and we rewrite the rules. If the council feels like it complies based on the definitions and information we've heard this evening, then we will proceed ahead. Otherwise, if the council doesn't think that it complies, then we have to go figure out another way to make it comply or shut the builder down and see where that takes us. And that's the direction I think I need.
The question still remains about the percentage. Do they not in the bricks on the siding to make that percentage?
You say, could he extend the brick on the siding?
Yeah, on the side.
He could. At this point, it's huge. He basically has to go in and rip the walls out on the inside of the house, rock insulation. You know, it could have. You know,
No, I'm not talking about the back. I'm talking about the side.
Yeah, the side. Because he's up to that box out point where he would have to.
Okay, it's out there all the way around.
Framing and so on and so forth.
Can he go up higher on the back?
I'm sure taking all the way up on the back. That's a veneer that can go on just like it is right there.
Well, that would get him to more than 75% of the exterior wall.
By doing the whole back.
Not according to the other roof.
He would only have 300 square foot. By my calculations and what I did see is
Well, we got 346.12 siding up there. So
Take out the windows.
that's that windows, 346.12.
He used 200 square foot for my calculations. Roughly. It would wind up probably fully the way up to this. Yes, that siding is 9 inches per. There's 9 inches per.
So he's got enough room back there, he could go up.
Yeah, if it's determined that that's what they want to, make you do based on not, there's agreements that they can't leave the wall section. Yeah, he can take it higher up on the back. But I can assure you, anybody, and I'm sure the people living out there wouldn't want to see it. He's not going to take it up to here and stop. You go that far, so you may as well go all the way up, because that's going to be they just wouldn't do that.
If you guys are going to give him a pass on this house, at least make him do something to bring it up to that. I mean, you can't just give him there's nothing right about giving him just a complete pass on the fact that he's trying to build a cheap house.
Okay, bring it up. If you took the stone up on the back, the house would be geometrically out of shape. Nobody would buy the house.
They've stopped where they stopped because of the construction on the side.
You could ask for a variance to switch it to the party.
That shows you have a sense of humor, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Bring a whole other issue in there.
What is the site of the church? What is the site of the church? It's the site of the church. It's Hardy Place.
It is Hardy.
It is Hardy Place.
Can we get an independent definition of what a cantilever truly is?
What's your dictionary on there?
Early 40s. This went down.
This is the encyclopedia Britannica for architecture. Basically, what it states is cantilever beams support a land and carry a load at the other end, distributed along the unsupported portion upper half of the thickness of such a beam is subject to tensile stress tending to elongate the fibers. The lower half is compressed strength tending to trust. Cantilevers are employed extensively in building constructions and machines. The building is being built into a wall with free and connected
Hello?
forms of
Hey,
cantilever.
we can't hear him.
There's some key words in here you need to
Yeah.
hear about stress.
Any building, in building, any beam built into a wall with a free end projecting forms a cantilever. Longer cantilevers are incorporated in the building for clear spaces required below. Cantilevers carrying a gallery roof, canopy, runway for an overhead traveling crane or part of the building above. Out of the encyclopedia, which is for cantilevers.
That's architectural. That's telling you that a beam extends horizontally from the vertical wall to where you have stress down. You do not have this in this case.
That's flush.
I thought
These
you
are
said
definitions in here.
I thought you said it went underneath it. You didn't. You told us that it went past the wall. That the trusses went out past the wall. Didn't you?
That's the,
To make it fit right. As you said, it was more intended to make it fit right, but it did go out there.
anything, basically anything that projects, but it's by definition of how far, but it doesn't say how far.
But it doesn't say how far.
There's no dimension, but when it projects beyond the vertical surface
Yeah.
and is in a, or is able to support its own plus whatever's designed to sit on it.
Yeah.
But a cantilever is anything that projects from the vertical surface or from the vertical plane, self-supported.
And also let you know, this brick that you see here does not match the rest of the house. So, what's going to happen if you require this? First of all, if you put a fence here, across here, you're still on the street about 5 feet lower. All you want to see, if the fence was up here, would be this portion here. Now, if you go ahead and brick it all the way to the top, yeah, that's great, but this brick, this brick on the side is not going to match this. I think it may have maybe a bigger eyesore. Just let you know.
To me, that's not.
Yeah.
Is that a fence set?
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
That stone on this side, that's the brick on that side.
Mr. Trammell,
It's
you want
just-
them
it's a stone, but
to
it's sort of-
stop the building or continue the building?
I think we're going up with the brick.
You want to go up with the brick?
Brick.
Yeah, so it can't go with the brick.
says stop. Billy says it's in compliance based on a definition that I'm not sure what AC.
That was my original statement. However, it can be, it's feasible to go on the hospital without being an eyesore.
I think it will be an eyesore to take that to the top.
We're taking that option off the table.
If you stop where you
And it's,
Nothing else is written about.
well, he's either gonna have to spend a lot of money or we're gonna have to move it. John?
You know, like I said, like through the plan review process that we look at for every project that we do, regardless if it's residential or commercial, that's what we rely on. And by definition, and how the ordinance defines it, and it's interpreted that way, unfortunately, we've got this.
In your interpretation, but, you know, it does meet the requirement.
Yes.
And that's, but we have to change that going forward.
I would have to go with their interpretation.
So we got three, what it says.
Billy Grover refused to sell as a homeowner.
What's that?
He refused to voting as a homeowner in Woodtown.
I think
We're not, well,
I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Actually, we're not voting.
I don't know why that would have anything to do with it. I can vote on issues related to the whole neighborhood.
No conflict.
Not really.
200 feet.
I don't live there in that part of the neighborhood. I can see it now from my backyard.
Okay, thank you, Ty and Joe. We're going to move on to item E, discussion regarding a inquiry from Curtis McDonald asking why Georgetown Heights and Georgetown Meadow residents do not receive discounted property taxes since the homeowners association pays for privately owned street lights.
Curtis McDonald, 401 Bryn Mawr Lane, Georgetown. My wife Deetta. I'm embarrassed that I don't have all the pictures and all the schematics and everything that John brought up here, but mine's more of a philosophical question than anything. Pretty much open for discussion, but when we were sitting down in Georgetown without streetlights for a little over a month, due to non-payment of electric by the HOA, a couple of things came to mind to several homeowners, and I'd like to discuss that right now to see if this is a situation that should be this way, what the arrangements that were made with the city by contract, or what the declarations of the developer were at the time the development was put in. But how many of the councilmen, by a show of hands, realize that the Georgetown HOA is paying for the electricity for the streetlights in Georgetown?
And so the other Georgetown district is like that.
It's my understanding that the Georgetown Village side is not paying for their streetlights through the HOA.
That's not what their head of
No,
the
they
HOA
are.
says.
Have you talked to Kurt Bringer about that?
I talked to David McGinnis
Okay, at
at
GCEC.
GCEC, and they are paying.
But they're not on GCEC. That's probably the
I think they're on Reliant, aren't they? or something
They're,
like that?
yeah, Encore Reliant,
Told me
TXU.
they were.
Okay. Now, here's the issue that I have. The single-family dwelling resident tax rates in the city of Van Alstyne are basically the same, whether you live in Georgetown or whether you live on Dallas Street or Jefferson or Tolson or wherever. However, our tax money that's collected, part of those taxes goes for a lot of things. But part of it goes for supporting the streetlights throughout the city that are on these streets that the city pays electricity for, GCEC, or to whoever the company is.
But if you live in Georgetown, you don't have the luxury. You're still paying the tax, but you don't have the luxury of getting your street lights in Georgetown, the electric paid for, and therefore it has to be paid through the HOA. My concern is, number one, how did that come to be? Did we have some sort of a declaration when the development was put in between Blaylock, the developer, and the city? Was that included in that as far as who pays for street light electricity or even street repair? Because I know of HOAs that have declared that they're going to take care of their own street repairs, and therefore they get an adjustment made in their tax rate. We're not getting an adjustment in our tax rate because we're paying for our own street lights, whether they're private street lights or not. And it's just up for discussion. I want to know, I'm just curious, it's not that big a deal, but it adds up. I mean, if the street lights run $800-900 a month, which I talked to GCEC, and that's about what they run just to maintain, it adds up. And with all the issues that we've been having in Georgetown, this just came to mind, and I'd like some kind of an explanation as to why the people in Georgetown are taxed the same as everybody else in the city on the residences, yet we have to pay again for our street lights when other citizens don't. Can anybody help me out and explain this?
When this all came up, I assumed that was part of the original agreement with Blaylock. And
It is with most
surely there's
HOAs
documentation
when they come into
available
a
at the
town.
city to provide that.
So if this is acceptable?
If that's what Blaylock said that he was going to do.
I mean, it's acceptable for him to say that this HOA, being on the board of the HOA, that we're going to take care of the streetlights, and you're not going to have to make an adjustment with the tax rate for the people who live here. Can you see where I'm coming from?
I answered that, Junior, you want me to?
Well, the tax code of the state of Texas only allows for exemptions in the tax rate for very specific things, such as disabled, elderly, things like that. If it's not listed in the tax code as an exemption the city's allowed to grant, you're not allowed to create other exemptions to the property tax rate other than what's in the tax code that the state of Texas has set forth.
And is it an acceptable thing for a developer to say the HOA is going to pay for the streetlights?
Yes, and usually when you see that, the city doesn't come to pay for the streetlights or take care of them unless the developer conveys them to the city after they're installed. So unless there's a transfer to the city, they stay with the developer, and the developer will transfer them to the HOA and let it be the HOA property. The common scenario when you see that happen is if the streetlights are more decorative than what would be in other parts of the city or what the city would maintain. And so the HOA keeps those because if someone hit one with a car and knocked it over, they want the HOA to be able to replace it with the more decorative ones that will still match the rest of the neighborhood and not a city issued street light, which would then look different. And so it's reasons like that developers will keep the street lights with an HOA instead of transferring them to the city.
I can clearly understand if there's damage or repairs that need to be made, that could be handled through an HOA, but for the electricity usage per street light is my concern. That's what we're paying for on a quarter-by-quarter basis. And if you just do the math and figure that we have the same tax rate, yet we're paying for street lights where it's paid for in all other parts of the city, the electricity, not the street light fixture itself.
It sort of sounds like what she's saying, though, is the developer would have to turn that over to the city.
Is there an agreement that can be?
Well, I mean, the city would have to agree to accept it, and the developer would have to agree to turn it over, I guess.
Well, it's being done. What supports that? Is it called a declaration, or what is it? What is tangible that we can take a look at to see what?
Well, there's nothing you could. I mean, but I say the developer, like whoever owns Georgetown whoever is Georgetown HOA.
Is
Should
there a
have to be their
contract?
choice to turn it over, right?
Is there a contract in place?
Huh?
James Flannery was here when that took place. That, that's been one of the biggest things that's happened in Van Alstyne in a number of years. James, I know you nodded that you remembered that.
Julie, will you correct me if I'm wrong? With the developer's agreement, and in the developer's agreement, it was the developer's choice that the utilities be underground. For them to have underground utilities, he had to put in the street lights, because you can't hang a street light on an underground cable. All the rest of town has street lights come on poles. So it was his choice, and at the time he did that, he set up his own HOA, and it was assumed by the council, and I imagine by him, that the HOA would always pay for the electricity and the maintenance of the streetlights.
So we're to pay on an assumption.
And it was your developer. It's not the city. It was the developer's agreement that he signed. And he, at this time, is your HOA. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I would like to see that document where we have, as an HOA, have agreed to pay the electricity.
I didn't say you. I said Mr. Playlock.
Pardon me?
I didn't say you. I said Mr. Playlock, the developer.
Yeah, but we as members should be, that information should be available, am I not correct?
I'm sure it was.
And it should be available with the city as well, is that correct?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
Was the same kind of thing done with Was the same kind of thing done with the other one with James? James? Was the same kind of thing done with the other part of the Georgetown?
I was not on the council.
You weren't there?
No,
I was there.
Oh, you were there?
I was there.
Okay, was it
A lot of things Mr. Blaylock done on the first installment of that, I didn't like, I didn't go for it, like garage doors couldn't be open for a certain amount of time, the lights and all that kind of stuff. And I too, it was fine to be a mess up, that's what you got now, here. Big mess up, because Mr. Blaylock was rich at the time, and now he's poor.
It somewhat goes hand in hand, but there seems to be some confusion about the responsibility of repair, and maybe it's just out of ignorance that we don't understand it. But how about street repairs in Georgetown?
It's city totally. They were all turned over to the city. They do any kind of street repair or water lines or sewer lines.
Okay.
That was all belong to the city.
Well, it still leaves a gray area. I don't have an answer. I understand the fixtures, and they're an updated fixture. They're more attractive to the neighborhood. It looks really nice. Everywhere else that I've seen, they're hung from the poles. But the electricity usage on those lights, I want to see an agreement why the HOA has reached an agreement and forcing the people in its membership to make that electric bill on a monthly basis.
When we passed that, if we had a agreement with this program,
You might be looking for a negative. I mean, they don't belong to the city unless they're given to the city. If the city didn't receive owner, the deed or on the plat or something transferred them to the city, then the city's not going to have them, or you've never have to take it over.
So are you saying if the city doesn't own the street lights, they can't provide the electricity for the lights? Because I think he's asking about the electricity, not the physical light.
I don't know how you separate it, because if the HOA owns them, then the city's paying for electricity in something that's private property, essentially.
Can we provide Mr. McDonald with that agreement that James was talking about, where, and Pat was talking about where, like I said, I'll take care of that? Can we provide that as a document to clarify that?
I don't have anything that I see that says that they're privately owned. That's what I'm asking for. I want to see the agreement. I want to see the arrangement. We clearly can't get that from Blaylock.
No.
Well, that's like asking for your house ask the city to give you something that says the city doesn't own your house. They're just not going to have anything because the property's never been given to them or belongs to them.
There should be a contract up there when we first started, when he told us he would take care of all that. And I know somebody probably had that, it's got to be on a contract or something.
It may be. That was before
original.
my time too. Though.
I know that.
Yeah, but we
Peter, do you have any idea where something like that might be back?
That was before your time.
It was before my time.
But I mean, do we keep any old records of what the old resolution? Because it definitely is something to sign. I know that for a fact. And you go take care of all of
There's
that.
an
Curtis, we can try to locate the document.
That's fine. My point is entirely this, is my tax rate is the same as everybody else's, yet I'm having to not only support streetlights throughout the city, but I'm having to pay again to an HOA on something. I want to know why that is. Are we double paying for streetlights? Absolutely we are. We're paying through our taxes because we're not getting a discounted adjustment. If the city recognizes, hey, you guys are paying for your own streetlights, we need to adjust your tax rate.
That's not, that's the, you can't do that.
Well,
That's a real.
there is a concern to be done.
There's an analogy, probably not every citizen of Van Alstyne goes to the library, but you can't come and say, I want you to reduce my tax rate because I'm not going to the library. I mean, there's, with almost every city service, you can make the same thing, which is why the tax code only allows count on one hand the number of exemptions you're authorized to grant, because all services aren't used equally.
Well, that basically leads us to see the documentation between Blaylock, the agreement that they had regarding the streetlights. If they've dedicated the streets, I don't know what I'm missing here, but it seems like streetlights and streets would always go together. I'd just like to see some support for the assumption, and see where we go from there.
We'll try to locate that.
You want your pictures back, Mr. Jennings?
John,
You want your pictures back? Oh, you can have
Okay, we're going to start on item 2, items from citizens, and we do not have any. And we do not have any public hearings, so we'll move on to action items. A, consider and take any action necessary regarding the minutes from September 13, 2001, zoning board of adjustments meeting September 13th, 19th, and 20th, 2011 meeting.
Second.
Councilman Smith makes a motion. Councilman Trammell seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. We will consider and take any action necessary regarding a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign an interlocal agreement to provide emergency medical service to the city of Tom Bean. Frank, do you want to say anything on this?
Myers, with the available units we have, and the number of calls that Tom Bean provided us at 50. The next highest bid was White Ride, which was who was providing service to them, and they bumped it up to $12,000. There's an opportunity for us to help out a partner, local municipality close to us. The number 50 is not a solid number. White Ride has not been providing accurate numbers for the county. So this is going to be taking Tom Bean at the number that they gave us. Out of looking at the whole for the year, this is not a huge number. This is something that we can achieve. Our time and distance is roughly 14 minutes on the calls that we have made over there, and we've received nothing but praise for us being allowed to do this. I'm asking that y'all allow us to continue to do this. It has already been passed by the city of Tom Bean, and they're eager for us to continue.
We're not delegating anybody strictly for that to be on standby strictly for that, though, right?
No, sir. This
It
is
seems like there is a little bit of
scheduling that we already have in place.
we allow the city manager to sign the agreement.
Okay, Councilman Smith. Councilman Smith makes the motion and Councilman Gorman seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes to allow the city manager to sign an local agreement to provide emergency medical services, City of Tom Bean.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Next, we will consider and take any action necessary regarding a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign an interlocal agreement for the sale of 331 gallons of minimum take or pay capacity in the amount of $18,300 to the city of Melissa.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We'll recall we've been working on this for some time. And as you know, we're in a consortium of 3 other cities, Melissa, Anna, and Howe. As part of that consortium, we have a certain amount of take or pay water we have to pay for each and every year, whether we use it or not. This last year, and that take or pay is consolidated among the 4 cities and divided 4 ways. Well, this last year, Melissa exceeded their individual take or pay, and so Hal and Anna and Van Alstyne are agreeing to sell them our respective portions of our capacity, which amounts to $18,350.
And that's our portion? Or is that all 3?
No, that's ours. We get a check from Melissa for $15,000.
That's applied to that take or pay. It just income.
It's income. Yeah, we'll go ahead and pay our
take or
bills.
payment for what this year?
No, the per 1,000 gallons went up.
Okay.
The amount of gallons did not.
The cost went up.
The cost went up. Yes, sir.
By how much? 18,000.
About 8. It was 8. No, we're going to net out on this deal. I think it was $7,000. It went from $1.42 per 1,000 to $1.54, which is our cost about 8%.
Okay. Make a motion that we authorize the city manager to sign
Councilman Smith makes the motion, Councilman Campbell seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Authorizing the city manager to sign a local agreement for the sale of the water to Melissa. We will consider and take any action necessary regarding a resolution adopting a council take-home vehicle policy. And I believe the council has a copy of the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is an item that we discussed during the budget work session on a couple of occasions, and Mr. Smith requested that this be placed on the item for discussion and consideration. The council will notice there is a draft council policy in here, and so I guess we're open for discussion at this point. At the same time, bullet number 3 there, if the council were to be in agreement with the rest of the items in here, then we would need to know under what conditions take-home vehicles would be allowed.
Well, I'm going to take and stand behind the position that I always have been comfortable with, is that the head of the department, because they are basically on call or are involved in whatever's going on situations, if you have it, and emergencies, that still be allowed, and a mileage not necessarily be connected with it. And I don't think that that's asking too much, because number one is we've always supported keeping everything that we possibly can keep in the best possible way to grow into the future with our police, fire, and ambulance, and public works, to be ready for anything. We've provided education, technology, and everything else, and the heads of the departments should have, I don't think personally or otherwise, it should be an issue that they get the calls for whatever the emergency might be, any hour of the day or night, and that goes straight down the line to, if it's police, fire, public works, there's a responder. And if there's a second responder, then the second responder also be given the same privilege, regardless of the miles or where they live or reside at. So that's the way I feel about it. And I do agree with everything that is within this policy, but consideration for that particular thing as it regards the department head. And also, let's remember something. It's not a 40-hour week. In some cases, it's not a 60-hour week. It's even more. There's a lot of additional hours that are contributed on behalf of this city by the department heads. And if we can't allow, you can call it whatever you want, a benefit, a perk, or whatever, to allow the head of the department to have the vehicle at their disposal for work or any emergencies 24/7 that they might have to respond to, then that's the position I'm going to take on that subject.
Well, it's been my recommendation and policy and the discussion of how much it costs to allow vehicles to go home at night was $7,200 that we talked about in our budget workshops. We as a city have got to start looking at ways to cut costs. We do not have a rosy future financially for this town, and that has been brought to our attention primarily with the hard work of Mr. Wheat with the budget process. I mean, the forecasts that he gave us are not pretty. We have got to look at cutting costs every chance we have. My first opinion was park everything at the end of the shift and not leave the city limits. I have, after I've reconsidered and I've talked to other people and got different opinions, I don't have a problem with vehicles being taken home in the ETJ. There are very specific lines for the ETJ. They're already drawn. They're already distinguished. If we do a mileage of 7.2 or whatever other calculations or response time, those are all subject to interpretation. The ETJ is already set. The line's already been drawn. The boundaries are established. So there's no question about it. And I think that we, as a cost-saving measure, need to restrict the miles that we put on our city vehicles to the ETJ. And that would be my motion to do that. I make a motion that we restrict take-home vehicles not to exceed the ETJ.
We have a motion by Councilman Smith and a second by Councilman Mosby. Any discussion?
Mr. Smith, on the ETJ, as we originally proposed it, since the ETJ is extremely rectangular, if you will, we had proposed that distance from the outermost part of the ETJ to create a radius, which would then create some equality among employees, if you will, various employees, live within that radius, would you accept that?
No, I want it to be, the lines are already there, and then the areas are established. They should not go beyond.
I think that will encourage our people to possibly move into the area. So it would certainly be an option.
Do we have a motion and a second? Any further discussion?
I don't mind having the mileage thing on. I think it should be some sort of mile thing though outside of it. I understand that we're talking about this policy and then with ETJ rather than anything else.
Try to fill in the blanks there.
Okay. I think that we should be trusting of our employees and allow them to decide how they need to use it too, just like John did. That we need to consider something else than putting definite restrictions that limit. I mean, everybody, on one kind of shop. Okay.
Well, we have a motion on the
I know.
table. Are you amending?
No, I'm not asking them anything.
I'm in agreement with John on that we don't need to have that.
Okay, so all in favor of the motion to accept this take-home policy with the ETJ as the geographic?
The motion wasn't about the policy, it was just for the ETJ.
Okay.
You wanted the policy in.
What we've got is
What the policy is.
So that's up to motion.
Take-home vehicles don't go outside the ETJ.
So the motion is to accept this with that is the, is that, okay. So I have a motion to accept this take-home policy with the ETJ as the radius on the mileage for a city employee to take home a vehicle. And Councilman Moses, second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. Any further discussion?
Well, now can we make another motion? Okay, I would make a motion to accept the policy and, as written, with the exception of declaring a distance as to how far they have to live home to be decided by. Now, does this one include what John said about the department heads making decisions or anything like that?
The policy states that the city manager will issue a management directive. Once the criteria is set by the council on the process.
But that would just be the determination whether or not somebody met this one.
Justification.
Okay. So, how do you want to say it, Tom? Can I ask that?
Well, we have, currently, there is a policy in place basically as to who does, who has it. But if it's a city manager decision as to, I mean, are we keeping current in place what we have as far as, I mean, we have vehicles going home. And we have, we'll take Chief Spindle, for instance. His vehicle goes home. The second, if there's an officer on duty, or not on duty, but on standby, then he also has a vehicle because it's equipped. It's properly equipped in case he gets called.
Yes, right. There is no actual written policy at this point. We have set out to write a management directive on. Typically what cities do is we'll establish some parameters around what the take-home vehicle can be and what the justification is for taking one home. There should be some benefit accrued to the city if a vehicle is to go home, and then they therefore would have to justify why they need a vehicle. Usually it's as you say, it's utility people on standby. They can take it home, utility truck, and they're on standby. And it's usually police officers who typically may not be first responders, but who would, it's usually supervisors, who could respond within a reasonable amount of time. Of course, is subjective. The city a lot of times about approximately 30 minutes is pretty typical for a lot of these policies. Occasionally they'll set some kind of radius with some certain distance. Again, that's somewhat subjective. And so we were just trying to get to a place where the council could be comfortable that those take-home vehicles, if they're allowed, to be utilized properly, and that there is some benefit and justification, or benefit that inures to the city, and there is some justification paid for them.
I guess I want to
How we get there?
Okay, my motion will be that the council policy that is written here and on the city employees are authorized to take home vehicles must reside within 30 miles from the approximate geographic center. That'd be okay?
Go for 30 minutes.
Okay.
That's up to the council.
Okay. That's my motion. We'll get you a second.
So we've got a third motion to accept this policy. 30 miles to reside within 30 miles of Center County. Is there a second? Yes. Councilman Borman, second. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The motion passes to accept this policy as written with the 30-mile radius from the center.
Well, it's going to assess the drive and going to out of state.
We are going to move past our next item on the agenda, which is to recess the closed session to save time so that the audience doesn't have to sit through that. So we're going to move on to F, which is G. Consider and take any action necessary regarding a resolution supporting improvements to FM 121.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, as is frequently done, the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, is really an adjunct council, takes on the council to rank projects based on anticipation of receiving or having received transportation money. They are in the process now. We'll be very soon ranking those projects and updating their transportation plans. And we are offering up a resolution tonight in support of two segments of FM 121 and ask that the MPO consider those favorably for future funding.
So this is asking them to consider improvements, but is this going to be, are we asking for it to be like federally funded? Or?
Well, they'll have a mix of the dollars that come in as they begin to rank these projects, and whatever that mix of dollars is and how they put it together, where they can fit it into the schedule, assuming it ranks within the dollars that gets funded, will be entirely up to the MPO.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is just try to encourage them and let them know that the city and the council is strongly urges they don't give us financial.
That's what it sounded like when it's read.
Any other questions?
Make a motion. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I needed to recognize Bill back there. Are you back there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't, did I articulate that well enough?
I think so. Unless there are any questions.
No, Bill was one as a member of the RMA has asked that the council bring this forward for the council's attention. I'm sorry, I didn't see.
So, Bill, can you go into it a little bit, just to kind of brief us on the program and just...
Well, what happens is that there's a organization that is a federal organization, but it's called the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is Sherman Denison, and we're included in that. And because of federal law, then they instruct TxDOT. They rank priorities, and then they instruct TxDOT where they see the priorities based on funding from the state and under the federal highway bill. And so what this issue is about is that the city of Van Alstyne had gone to the MPO a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, and asked that 121 be designated as the major east-west collector in the southern part of Grayson County between the proposed new tollway and 75, which then would give our quarter priority. And so in doing so, then they elevated the level of priority for that roadway. And so there are the MPO is considering not only their 2014 budget, but also will be looking at their 2017, 18, and 19 budgets and looking at projects in the county and then ranking them for their importance. One of those projects is looking at the strip of 121 between Van Alstyne and Elmont, which has a very high traffic count on it, falls off considerably going farther west than that. The other area that they're considering is the S-curve that is west of Elmont for two reasons: safety reasons. Gunner actually has mentioned in this discussion that it would improve Van Alstyne's response time if they were able to contract back with the city of Van Alstyne to provide emergency services. So Gunner is likewise supporting this, but those are the two projects that are being ranked at this time. Ultimately, over time, this may be 20 years in the future or 30, but that section of highway between here and the proposed tollway would then continue to be upgraded. And if you were looking way off into the future, you might assume it would be something similar to 380. If you look at George Bush, look at 380, 121, and the outer loop, 121 and 82 would be the major connectors. Be important to the city of Van Alstyne for mobility, but also important to the city of Van Alstyne for economic development. Because if you look at what's along 82 today, it's significant economic growth that would be good for the city of Van Alstyne. We own a great deal of that, will be within the city in that period of time, a great deal of that stretch of road.
Now, would we be picking up part of the land acquisition costs and things like that?
There's no cost to the city of Van Alstyne in this and the things that are being discussed. At some point, and as in with the S-curves, TxDOT will go to the landowners and try to do land swaps, try to acquire right of way, and if they're not, then the project will then fund whatever acquisition has to take place. And the S-curve is a project that could happen within the next couple of years if it falls within the funding mix. The widening of 121 to Elmont is probably a 5-7 year, but if you don't get in line, it never comes up. Could be a 10-year project.
Has a motion. Do I have a second? Councilman Trammell has a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes to take action necessary regarding a resolution supporting improvements to FM 121. Next, we will consider and take any action necessary regarding appointments to boards and commissions, park and library. I believe we have on the Parks and board, we have currently serving Mr. Bill Benton, Ms. Sharon Evans, and Mr. Larry Ashley. Looks like Ms. Sharon Evans and Mr. Ashley are up for reappointment, and we have 2 other vacant. There's 5 positions, and there's 3 that are currently serving. And we have 2, I guess, Sharon Evans and Larry Ashley have indicated they want to continue on the board. Is that correct?
Tina may have to address that. She's been working with boards and commissions.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
We do have one vacancy, 2 vacancies rather. One vacancy has been for quite some time. The second vacancy was when Mr. Bobo's removed. Sharon Evans and Larry Ashley, they have both agreed to continue to serve. Larry Ashley has exceeded the number of terms and years allowed, but is willing to serve until a qualified replacement can be found. The ordinance does allow for that. Sharon Evans is willing to serve until a qualified replacement can be found, but no more than 1 additional year. She does not want to serve a 2-year term. You have a application from Mr. Adam Wise for place 2 that is one of the vacant positions. We also have an application that we did receive in the record for you from Jay Cooper for place 3.
What's the vacancies as well?
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion, we add the 2 vacancies with the 2 applicants that are good and extend Larry Ashley's term to where he can now serve again, and accept them as they're listed here.
And Mr. Plank has a motion to accept the 2 vacant positions with the 2 applicants and continue Larry Ashley and Sharon Evans for 1 more year. And Councilman Mosby seconds. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Next, we will move into discussion items. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is researching the library board with Tracy. It was established by ordinance 286. This is like several years ago. That ordinance did not specify the number of persons to be appointed, did not address key qualifications of board members, or the number of persons to be appointed to the board. It also stated that the library was to be governed by the board, and the board was answerable to themselves. I'm sorry, they do not govern. But that's not what the ordinance states. The ordinance that was in place. Your options are to allow the current members of the board to continue to serve and allow staff time to draft an ordinance that addresses the issues related to this board so that they will be an advisory board to the library and to the council, and they will not be a governing board that they are. If you'll have a chance to establish the number of members, qualifications of those members, any term limits that you wish, but
that's one of your options. Your second option is to find a members to the board and allow the ordinance that is currently in place to stand where they appoint themselves.
Any questions?
I make a motion to accept the recommendation to allow Kim Teal, Mike, Matt Sullivan, Glenn Denton, Roger Smack to continue to serve and direct staff to draft an ordinance relating to the composition of the board.
Have a motion by Councilman Hunt, have a second. Councilwoman seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes to allow the current board to continue to serve and direct staff to draft an ordinance related to the composition of the board. Next, we're going to move on to discussion items. As the mayor, have asked that the council look at, due to the fact this is Cancer Awareness Month, and the city of Van Alstyne wants to be proactive and be a leader in this part of North Texas, that we look at adopting a smoking ordinance or a non-smoking ordinance. And I received a copy from another city on one that they passed, and the council has a copy of it in their book. And mainly it addresses non-smoking of public-owned areas and city-owned property. This one goes as far as to say that even in HOA public areas, that smoking will not be allowed. I'm not sure that that's something that we can have enforced, but does anybody have any discussion on anything like that?
Is this up to
This is just discussion.
the city attorney drafting the ordinance? Is that what we're asking for?
Well, yeah,
Suggestions.
we'd probably bring you a draft and let the work session or something, let the council input into it, mark it up, and decide where the council wanted to go. There are a number of models out there by which we can come up with a draft.
Is that something that the council wishes to do?
Yes. There already is a law for the state that you can't smoke inside city buildings, is that correct?
State law. Maybe state facility, state.
State buildings.
So,
I don't see how that's for sure. We have newly drafted policy ordinance. Ordinance, they look at it in the next meeting.
So when we say,
We probably need to put it on a work session so the council can really.
Give some direction.
when we say public property or city-owned properties, I mean, are we talking like sidewalks and parks and everything?
Well, I mean, it's what we would, as the council, agree.
I can support that.
That'd be, you'd have to comply with the five regulations.
Yeah, you just want to do that if it looks like the restaurants and outside buildings.
So that's fine. Councilman Trammell, what is your wish on that? Do you want to continue discussion on it? Or directly?
Discussion, I'd like to have some more information.
Councilman Smith?
Let's do it.
Okay. Councilman Borman?
I'm for non-smoking.
Councilman Mosby? Yes. Well, we will have to discussion on that at a work session. I believe that Councilman Blake wants to address code enforcement issues.
Yeah, I'd just like to have us come up with some acceptable code enforcement for, keeping guards up and keeping houses up and doing the things that most cities have in place to control what goes on there, to try to make the town look nicer and better. And so I would like to propose that the city draft code, rules up and go. Our biggest problem is then we have to turn around and figure out how to enforce it. Whether we have a code enforcement person or that kind of stuff. It'll do great to have this nice law, but if we can't figure out a way to have somebody on board doing it, it won't accomplish a whole lot. So, well, we presently have a code. We have code on grass being too tall and on junk cars sitting around, and that's enforced by Officer Smith, and I think there's another officer too that's doing code enforcement.
Let us compile all the ordinances.
Yeah.
And, take a look at it and bring it to you in work sessions.
Okay. That's what I'd like
See
to
what
have.
we got on the ground first.
Yeah.
Talk about how
Okay.
funny.
That's fine.
Next, we need to discuss park ordinance revision. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We have had some issues with solicitation in one of our parks, and so when we were reviewing the park, I asked for all the park ordinances and the ordinances on parks, and all we have on the books right now is one ordinance that addresses just Morrismore Park, and it only addresses a few things in that particular park. We have drafted for the council review consideration for future meeting a fairly comprehensive park ordinance, and so we would ask the council to take a look at that. If you've had an opportunity to read it, take some feedback this evening, and we'd like to put that on a future agenda. And it pretty much covers all of the standard kinds of things that you don't want to have happen in your park. It's been supposed to be.
The last thing in the packet was
Okay. All right, I'll get that to you tomorrow.
Are we in the process? I know at one time that we talked about the people who were doing vending in the park over here moving over, to a different place or something like that. Is any of that going on with?
I haven't heard.
there last Saturday.
They were there last Saturday.
I know that
I heard the Chamber of Commerce was working.
the chamber has been visiting with, I guess, Mr. Lucatino about that possibility, but I don't think they've moved forward with it.
Okay.
I think they've been given the direction, but they haven't pursued it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had discussed it some months ago related to farmers market in the downtown area, which is in and of itself a very good idea with all traffic. The issue, again, the chamber was interested in maybe doing something on some property they own, which with a special use permit has the proper zoning, and with a little bit of organization, they could establish something like that. In the meantime, we've been some vendors set up in one of our public parks, which certainly creates some issues in terms of our other park patrons trying to enjoy the park. It's a good idea, it's just kind of in the wrong place. Public with an ongoing concern for profit operation on public property. So this ordinance would address that and a whole bunch of other things as well.
Through the discussion items. Now we're going to recess into closed session pursuant to Chapter 551 of the Zoning Code for deliberation regarding the appointment of and employee agreement for the city manager.